I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is our nerdiest thing.
Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to our nerdiest thing. Today, we are continuing our discussion of Quicksilver by Callie Hart. We're talking about chapters 35 through 39. And when I say we are continuing our discussion, I mean I am continuing our discussion. Nerds, this is a once-in-a-lifetime first ever episode where it's just me. It's just Whitney today talking about Quicksilver. You know, life, I think Deb would say, life has been kicking us in the cooter lately. So Deb and Mindy were not able to be here and the show must go on. So here I am, and we're going to have a great time. Although I don't know who I'm going to thank for their comings and their goings. So I guess, listener, thank you for your comings and your goings. And we'll go ahead and get started with our nerdiest cocktail. Tonight's drink is named Martyr's Mayhem and is themed after Kingfisher being a real dum-dum. This drink pairs well with pretending to be a dick, goodbye sex with no warning, and piecing out and leaving a fucking note. It may cause the worst decision-making ever. And this is a very simple gin cocktail. You got some gin, some lemon juice, and some honey simple syrup. Quite yummy. So please enjoy that. And I just have to say that I really appreciate that this drink is themed after Kingfisher being a real dum-dum, because that is exactly what I wrote down word for word in my notes. And I hope that you guys agree with that as well. I'll get into that a little bit later. But first, it's time for the nerdy and dirty recap. And you know what? The Wheel o' Names doesn't really have to speak because we know whose turn it is. It's me, you guys. I have 30 seconds to share some of the things that happened in this section of the book. And I will go ahead and tell you, I'm using Mindy's notes. So this is kind of a 2-for-1 special. Mindy's notes, but Whitney's reading. So 30 seconds on the clock and away we go. Cyrus gets the scoop from Fisher. He's known all along that they were mates because his mom, the Oracle, laid it all out for him. Fisher was an asshole to Cyrus on purpose so she would hate him, and he thought he was protecting her, of course. To save Everlane, they need a very powerful gassy witch to help with Malcolm's venom. Danya fucks things up with the witches because she's a petulant bitch, but Fisher convinces the witch Ishabel to help them. Fisher and Cyrus have sexy times in the cottage, and Fisher accepts the mating bond, but then he fucking pieces out to die at the hands of Malcolm and leaves Cyrus a stupid note. Cyrus makes Carry-On Oh, Mindy, we're going to blame this on Whitney's ability to read not that fast and not your note taking. But that was some of the things that happened in this section of the book, but I'm going to finish with this last little bit. Cyrus makes Carry-On a sword that he names Simon so they can go and get Fisher back. Everlane falls from a portal in the ceiling. Cyrus and Carry-On rush to go through it, but end up drowning in a lake. But thankfully, Lorith comes and saves them. They climb up a cliff to find a slaughterhouse, so we find out Anorath Moor means release us, and hundreds of thousands of people are saying it. Then fucking Heron shows up out of nowhere and sends them through a vortex to a labyrinth where Fisher is, and Fisher tells Cyrus, "Don't come here." Guess what, Fisher? It's too late. She's already there. And that's what happened in this section of the book. I can also go ahead and share our nerdiest vocabulary. Thank you. Shout out to Mindy for giving us this word today. We have a new character, Ishabel, and that is how you pronounce it. Our word nerd shared a pronunciation guide, Ishabel. That is the Scottish Gaelic form of Isabel or Elizabeth, and it means pledged to God, God is my oath, or God's promise, which is a very odd name for a witch. And can I just go ahead and say that I am curious as to how Ishabel is going to play into the story, because I feel like they made a really big deal about going to these like half witches and finding somebody who was willing to come help them. And then, you know, she shows up and they're like, "Hey, we got this one to come." And then she just kind of like stands over by the window, stands over by the wall the whole time and doesn't really do anything, doesn't really I mean, obviously she's waiting for Everlane to get there to like actually do what she said she was going to help them with. But she didn't really participate in anything conversation wise. We don't get to know her at all. And I just thought that was kind of strange. So I'm curious to see how she's going to continue to play into the story, especially now that our main characters have left, right? So Isabel is not with Cyrus and Carrion and Lorith. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Well, guys, we're going to keep on going and get into some of the nitty and gritty. And I'm going to tell you about my favorite moments in this section of the book. This is also kind of a biggest revelation. I loved the reveal that Fisher's mom was an oracle and that she told him about Cyrus in sort of abstract terms, right? She didn't know her name. She just knew your mate is going to show up, and she's going to show up very chaotically, which I really loved that tidbit. I just think that's really special. It's a special memory that he gets to have about his mom. And as a mom myself, I love the idea that she found comfort in knowing that her son was not going to face all this struggle and suffer by himself, right? That he was going to find this mate and have somebody able to stand with him. And I just feel like that would have been a source of peace when I also can foresee that my kid is going to go through a bunch of crap, right? I love that she drew Cyrus to the point where he knew exactly what she was going to look like. It was very accurate, except she drew Cyrus with pointy fae ears, which, you guys, come on. Cyrus is fae, right? Like, she has to be fae. We've already, from the very beginning of the book, talked about how she has to have at least a little bit of fae in her to be able to be an alchemist. And we've got this fae name, and she's got these royal fae features with her dark hair. And we know there's that missing dianthus heir that I keep saying I think is got to be Cyrus, right? And now the oracle mom of Kingfisher has drawn her with fae ears. Like, okay, this is just more. I think I need like points A, B, like I did for proving that Fisher and Cyrus are mates. I need that for Cyrus being fae. So hopefully you guys are on board with that. Props to Fisher's mom for bringing that back to us, that I think she is the dianthus heir. So let's see how that goes as we keep reading. I also can share with you Mindy's favorite moment, and it's when Cyrus wakes up and sees Fisher just staring out the window, and instead of leaving leaving him alone, she goes over and holds him until he says he's better. And I loved that moment too, Min, that it was very vulnerable and very sweet. And she also wrote down when the Quicksilver asks for a joke and Cyrus can't make it laugh, but Carrion can, which is par for the course for how I react to Cyrus and Carrion's humor as well. He is freaking funny. Like he is funny. And I really, really love him as like the comic relief. That did make me laugh a lot that the Quicksilver was like, your joke kind of sucks, but we like this guy over here. And then last but not least, Mindy, you have 3 favorite moments. Girl, I only had 1. I wish I had picked 3 too, because there was a lot of stuff to like in this section of the book. When Cyrus is desperate to wake Carrion up after Lorith saves him, and she says that she'll tell everyone in their ward that he's a shitty lay. And that is when he wakes up and says, you wouldn't fucking dare. That was a pretty great moment for me as well. I thought that was really funny. And it is very Carrion to want to protect his sexual reputation as the way to bring him back to the land of the living. I appreciated that a lot. So now I'm going to have to bring us down just a little bit, you guys, to share my least favorite moment, which it has to be Fisher leaving to sacrifice himself for what he believes is the greater good. About 5 seconds after he accepts the mate bond with Cyrus, I was so mad as a reader, but also on all the other characters' behalf. I thought that was crappy. I thought it was dumb. And of course, they're going to try and save him. Like, I do not understand Fisher's thought process that he's just going to go do this, make the sacrifice, leave them a freaking letter, and that they're all just going to like sit down at his house and cry about it and let him do it without trying to save him. Like, you guys just made this complicated plan to save Everlane from certain death, right? Like, why would you think that they wouldn't want to do the same thing for you? And like, how did he not see that coming? And that honestly brings me to one of my big questions from this section of the book. I am really struggling to understand Fisher's logic and how this is at all helpful in the grand scheme of things. So I don't understand how him giving himself up is protecting anybody or saving anybody. Like, I understand that he's trying to get Everlane. I get that. But is that it? Like, is there more to this plan that I'm not understanding? That did I read it too fast and skipped over some things? I'm not really sure. I think that I remember in the letter that he left for Cyrus that he said something about like, get everybody out, but is he just buying them time? Like, I didn't understand. What am I missing? Friends, send us a message and let me know what it is that I'm missing. And Mindy had the exact same feelings. She said Fisher leaving a fucking note for Cyrus and leaving her is her least favorite moment. I'm right there with you, men. Once again, deciding things for her, which is exactly what I wrote in my notes as well. He's choosing for her, which is not okay, man. Like, have a conversation, especially now that she knows that she is your mate and you just told her that you accepted the mating bond. Like, have a conversation. She's an adult. She is a person with a brain who has feelings and thoughts and opinions and can maybe help you think through some things. So like, talk to your mate, right? He says he doesn't want martyrs for friends, but he's the dumbass being a martyr. Those are Mindy's words, not mine. And Mindy also has another least favorite moment. Danya insulting the witches and nearly fucking things up for them again. Mindy, I completely agree with you. And I wrote in my notes, like, why did they even let her come with them? She has proven over and over again, especially in recent chapters, that she sucks and that she is not emotionally stable at this moment in her life for understandable reasons with the stuff that has happened with her sword and, you know, her hand exploding and all of that stuff. But then they said she didn't even thank Talena for growing a hand, which, by the by, that was the biggest revelation for me, that she even had a new hand. That didn't even cross my mind as a possibility, and it totally should have. And I was really disappointed in myself that I didn't think like, well, of course, with Fae magic and Fae healing magic, they can grow her a new hand. I just thought that she was going to be like the one-handed bitch for the rest of her life, which honestly, I feel like that they should have just done that. They should have just let her be the one-handed bitch for the rest of her life, right? So that was a big revelation for me. I have another one as well, but I'm going to let you know what Mindy's biggest revelation was. That Kingfisher was the one who initiated the waiting period for the mating bond, but then he accepts the bond, which I did think was kind of weird. I would like to know a little bit more about this world and the mating bond and how it works, because I just assumed that if one part of the mate pair, if one of them accepted it, then it would automatically be accepted for the other one as well. And like, likewise, if one of them rejects it, the other one rejects it as well, right? Like, I thought it was a mutual thing. I didn't know that one person could accept it and the other person choose not to. So like, he accepts it, but if she rejects it, does he still feel a pull toward her because he accepted the bond, or would it sever the bond that he feels? I'm very curious about that. That's actually another one of my big questions. I need to know a little bit more about that. I also wrote for my biggest revelation, the meaning of a Norath Moor. Lorith gives us this meaning, and Mindy mentioned this in her notes for the recap. It means release us. So another question that I have, listeners, is who is she hearing say that? Because she has heard a Norath Moor in several different situations. Because at the end of this last chapter 39, when they find this basically like slaughterhouse, she's hearing people who are being killed, right? But in these other situations where she has heard the Anorath Moor, I feel like she's hearing the Quicksilver talking. So is she always hearing the Quicksilver? Is the Quicksilver talking on behalf of these people? Like, I'm very confused about that, because I keep thinking that she is hearing the Quicksilver in Fisher's body, right? Especially when she and Fisher were in that little village at the festival in Ballard, I think is the name of the village. She was hearing a Norath Moor, and he knew that she was hearing it, which made me think that she was listening or hearing his Quicksilver in his body, right? So let's pretend like that's true for just a minute. So if she is hearing the Quicksilver in Fisher's body saying, release us, then what exactly does that mean? Does that mean being separated from his body? Because it just told us that it can't be separated from Fisher's body, right? So the Quicksilver in Fisher already told Saris that it cannot be separated from his body, because she asked it if it would leave, and it said, we can't, we're one, right? If we die, he dies. If he dies, we die, right? So it can't be saying release us, like get us out of Fisher's body. So if it's the Quicksilver in him talking, I think it has to mean release us in terms of release our power as you use yourself as a weapon like we intended, because that's also what they told Saris, right? They've basically made him a god sword by, melding with him, right? Becoming one with his body. So what exactly does the Quicksilver in his body, like what do they want him to do, right? And I'm really, really hoping that now that he's in this like desperate situation with Malcolm, where he thought he was giving himself up and now his mate has shown up, I'm hoping that he like unleashes whatever this Quicksilver power is going to be. I also had a biggest revelation with the reveal of the Oshelith butterfly. So Fisher has been calling Saris little Osha, right? And he told her that it was because these butterflies are weak and they can't handle the cold and they die like in 24 hours, right? But we got a little bit more information that is extremely important and gives an entirely new meaning to this little nickname of his, right? So he tells us that this Oshelith butterfly is actually super rare and very precious rather than weak and vulnerable. And I thought that was so sweet. And he talked about people, giving up their lives to protect these butterflies in, the day that they live so that they can, lay eggs or whatever and continue their line. And it happens like once in 1,000 years. And I loved that. And it made me think about animals in the real world that are like once in a lifetime animals, right? And I found a couple of different articles that talk about exactly that. You can find these articles linked in the show notes if you want to read more. I'm just going to share a few of my favorites. So first up are a couple of animals who are once in a lifetime because they're really good at hiding, and they're very rarely seen because they're good at hiding. So first up, we have the okapi. This animal is well adapted to the environment where they live, which helps them to avoid predators, including leopards and people. Okapis look kind of like zebras. They have dark reddish fur and zebra-like marking stripes on their bodies to help camouflage them among dense, shadowy forests where they live. They also have incredibly good hearing, which keeps them alert to approaching threats. They're known locally where they live, but Western scientists didn't even know okapis existed until the early 1900s, and they remain difficult to observe in the wild today for all the reasons that I just gave you. Then next up, I love this one. You have the Mexican burrowing toad. So this toad spends most of its time underground, and they only come out once a year, and it has to be after a heavy rainstorm when it comes out to breed. Now, I did not deep dive into why they need the heavy rainstorm, but I feel like Deb would make a joke about like it just has to be really wet to have the breeding work, right? So researchers often find Mexican burrowing toads underground by following the sound of their wailing mating calls. A whale, you guys. My goodness. So that one is reminding me the most of the Oshelith butterfly because they only come out once a year. So now a couple of animals that are rare just because of their habitats. So these animals that I'm going to share with you live in just really specific environments and are only found in like one place in the world. So you have to travel to that one specific place to ever see it. So first up, we have the Yangtze finless porpoise, which I don't know if I am pronouncing that correctly. I apologize if I'm not. Please correct me if you know. It's spelled Yangtze, and they live only in the Yangtze River in China. So much like its predecessors, which were the now extinct Yangtze River dolphins, there has never really been a time when this finless porpoise was not facing extinction. So they only live in this river in China, and they're fresh water. So they can't just, move from the river to go to the ocean or anything because they need to stay in the fresh water. So you've got changing climates, habitat fragmentation, a rapidly increasing loss of food, all making them face extinction, right? And they're extremely rare, and very few people are able to actually find these creatures in their natural wild habitat. Scientists have estimated a time of about 50 years until they think that this finless porpoise will be completely extinct and wiped off the face of the earth. Currently, they estimate there are around 1,000 spineless porpoises around. The note that I wrote down is around the globe, but that doesn't make any sense because it needs to be in the Yangtze River. So that's one. Next up, the shoebill stork, which you guys need to look up a picture. Click on the articles in the show notes and look at the picture of the shoebill stork because it looks insane and it would scare the crap out of me if I saw this in real life, because listen to how big they get. These storks live in eastern Africa in the wetlands near the Nile River. Shoebill storks can grow up to 5 feet tall. I personally am 5'3", so you're talking about a big, scary-looking bird that's almost the same height as me, a grown adult woman, and their wingspan can go up to 8 feet. 8 feet wide. So you think about a Whitney-sized creature with just like super long arms. That sounds horrible. Oh my gosh. I need one of our artist friends, Deb, if you're listening, to draw like me as a shoebill stork with like an 8-foot wingspan. That would be fantastic. Make it into a shirt, friends. They have the frightening ability to stand perfectly still for hours while holding the bills against their necks. So they're exposing their eyes at like a super creepy angle, like their chins down, beaks pointing down, and their eyes like looking up. Their eyes are golden. So just imagine like a 5-foot tall, 8-foot wingspan standing completely still with golden eyes staring at you. Like, absolutely not. The article says it would make any rational human run for his life. And then last but not least, this one is kind of a weird story. And this is a once in a lifetime animal for sort of a different reason. They're not necessarily hard to find, but it's a once in a lifetime animal because of how it came to be. So basically in the 1940s, there was an army depot in 1941 that was built in Seneca County, New York. And when the fence for this army depot's perimeter was built, it confined some deer within the property of this new depot, right? So the deer were basically stuck inside this property and it became like their new home, right? So some of those deer inside the fence line had a recessive gene trait where their coat was completely white. It's not albinoism, but it kind of looks like that shade of like very pale white. And scientists don't know exactly what causes this recessive gene or gene mutation, but those particular deer seemed more inclined to inbreed with each other than the deer without that recessive gene. So the deer with the recessive white coat gene inbred with each other and just made more white coat deer. So this rare genetic marker is just continually passing on this recessive gene from the father and the mother, and it just keeps going down their family tree. So then in the 1950s, the depot made a rule white deer could not be shot, therefore protecting them, and the herd grew to about 700 deer total, 300 with the recessive white coat gene, which is the largest herd of these white deer that we know of. And I think that's still true even today. It's basically because there just happened to be a couple deer with the same recessive gene expression in the right place at the right time inside the fence perimeter of this army depot, which is just so like once in a lifetime kind of timing, right? They didn't do it on purpose. It's just the way that it worked out. So the actual army depot closed in 2000. And in 2016, its 7,000 acres of property was sold to a local businessman named Earl of Seneca Ironworks for a little less than $1 million. And he established it as Deer Haven Park. An agreement was later made between the founders of Seneca White Deer Incorporated and this Earl who just made this Deer Haven Park. They leased part of the land and they operated as a conservation park for the white deer. They did some renovations. They fixed the fencing. They constructed a welcome center and a museum. And then Seneca White Deer Park opened for tours in 2017. They closed right before 2020, and then they reopened in the summer of 2020 as self-guided auto tours. So you like stay in your car and drive around, which is a very cool feature if you've ever been to a open air like park that would let you do that. Gettysburg will let you do that if you are a Civil War person, just so you know. The current plans for the depot are to preserve the approximately 200 deer left through strategic investment and innovation. And you can find the Wikipedia link for that in the show notes as well. But I thought that was such a random, weird, cool story that they accidentally created this really rare, huge herd of these deer without really meaning to. So there you guys go. That was my biggest revelation and a little bit of education as well. Let's go into the favorite spicy scene, which I wrote in my notes, all of it, question mark. The spice was spicing. And I will say, I think my favorite part of that scene was really just the concept of be in the moment right now, right? Like there is so much heavy crap facing us. Don't worry about that right now. Let's be in the moment. Let's focus on right now tonight. We'll worry about tomorrow when tomorrow happens. But then when you get to the end of this section, or even the end of that chapter, it really kind of got tainted for me personally when I read that Fisher runs away and, you know, like Mindy said, takes another choice from Saris. I know he's coming from a place of love and like wanting to protect her. He's coming from a good place. I get that, but he's doing it in like the worst possible way, specifically for her, taking a choice away from her. And it just kind of like, I don't want to say it ruined the whole spicy scene and like the lovingness of it, but it did sully it a little bit. It doesn't come across as great to me or as sweet anymore, knowing that happens at the end of it. Right. And knowing how Saris feels about it too. Right. Like, I feel like she feels that same way of, this was such a great night. This was such a vulnerable moment. This was such a great time for us to bond on, I mean, not in like a sexual way, but on a deeper emotional level. You know, he tells her that he accepted the mating bond, right? Like they have this big conversation about it, and then he still pieces out and splits. And that just sucks, you know? And Mindy's favorite spicy scene is really just this quote from Fisher. "Nobody will ever fuck you the way I'm about to fuck you, Saris Fane. I'm about to introduce you to all 7 gods. When you meet them, don't forget to tell them I'm the one you worship on your knees." That is a great quote, Mindy. And you're getting me to say the F word more than I normally would. So props. Shout out to Mindy. I'm going to share with you Mindy's chapter MVP, Lorith, because he is always the steadfast and helpful one of this group. Gosh, that is the truth. He's mad about Fisher and what Fisher's choices have been, but it doesn't cripple him, right? And then he ends up saving Saris and Carry-On's asses in the lake because they can't swim, which didn't even occur to me as an option that they wouldn't know how to swim, right? But obviously they don't have that. So that makes sense. Carry-On is actually my chapter MVP because he comes in clutch once again with an idea that saves the day, right? He did it with the Quicksilver earlier. Why don't you just ask it? And he's done it again with this shadow portal. Like, well, why don't we just go through the shadow portal to go get Fisher? Like, without a Carry-On, where would we even be truly in this story at this point? And I wrote down, still throwing grass and spit at Quicksilver in the forge. And I also love that Carry-On has his own Quicksilver weapon now, even though he's human, right? Allegedly human, which I'm still not convinced that he may not be like part Fae. Like maybe he's the Diantha Slayer. That would be fun. I want to see what his Quicksilver weapon can do. I'm curious to see if it's different at all because the wielder of the weapon is human instead of Fae, or if it doesn't matter because it's really about the Quicksilver anyway. You know, I'm curious about that. But Mindy, I was right there with you with loving Lorith because he's my favorite secondary character, really for the same reasons that you already mentioned. But I love Lorith. I already love him. And the fact that he's there to be support for Saris while she's trying to save Fisher, I just think is perfect for his character. And it makes me like him even more. I like to think that he's there, not because he was fast enough to get through the portal, but because he made a conscious choice as a great guy, right? Although luck and being fast enough had a lot to do with it. He gives us the meaning of a Noreth Moor, which is a question that I've had since the beginning of the book. So major shout out to Loreth for giving us all of that. And Mindy's favorite secondary character is the Quicksilver and its dirty sense of humor, which goes into Carry On being funny. So favorite quotes. I have two favorite quotes. One is funny from Carry On and one is sweet from Fisher. So the Carry On one is when they're like, he says he could go to help with the witches and they're like, no, you just try to sleep with them. And he goes, no, he's right. Carry On said with a sigh, I would, just to say I'd done it. That made me laugh. And I'm still going to be waiting for him to try to sleep with Ishabel. And then the sweet one from Fisher, he says to Saris, if it were up to me, we wouldn't spend another night without each other again. However, this kind of gets sullied later because guess what, Fisher? It kind of is up to you and you left. So you are very actively choosing to spend nights away from your mate Saris. Because in fact, it is up to you. So that was a little frustrating. Mindy has a couple of favorite quotes as well, and they are both like sweet from Saris and Fisher. So the one from Saris says, my soul was on fire, and I didn't care if I burned for all eternity. So long as I was burning with him, then so be it. I loved that too. That was a really sweet one. And then this one from Fisher, I'm in love with you, Saris Fane, and I'm already half mad anyway. What's a little complicated thrown into the mix? That was on my list, my short list of favorite quotes as well. So let's get into some questions. Mindy's got a couple. Why did Fisher's mom draw Saris with fae ears, but she doesn't actually have them? Well, man, I don't actually know the answer because I haven't finished this book, nor have I read book 2, but I think it's because Saris is actually fae. That I've thought that the entire book, and I still continue to think that. So that's my answer, and time will tell if I'm correct. Mindy's other question is, what happened between Loreth and Ishabel that he is so salty with her? I actually would love to know that as well, and that kind of goes back to one of my thoughts from earlier this episode, like what's going on with her, and how is she going to play into the story later, right? Because like I said, there was so much lead up to her showing up, and then it felt very like anticlimactic once she showed up, because it's like, well, she's just going to stand over there in the corner and then we're going to leave and we're not going to actually get to see what she does to help Everlane. So unless they go back with, Saris's POV, we don't actually know what's going on with her. But I would like to know more about what happened with Loreth as well. So my questions, one of my big ones was the one about the witch, right? Like, how is she going to play into the story? But my other big one, are Madra and Malcolm working together? Because based on the fact that weirdo Quicksilver-eyed Heron is in the Fae realm, they must be working together, right? Like they have to be. So I cannot believe that neither Mindy nor I had Heron as our biggest revelation, which I'm realizing was probably a missed opportunity because that was insane, right? So, Heron is there. He's the captain of her guard. The last time we saw him, he was like choking on his own blood or something, or like bleeding to death, but he's obviously not dead, although he might be like a weird Malcolm vampire, which would fit with my theory that that's exactly what Madra is. So Madra and Malcolm definitely have a connection, especially if I'm right that she is one of the vampires. What's going on? And are his eyes actually made out of Quicksilver, or did they just look like they were? Again, maybe I read that section too quickly. So I want to know, and I'm hoping this is a reveal before the end of this book instead of in book 2, because I'm really hoping that our next couple of sections will give us the answers to that. So those are my questions. I have a lot of things that I'm looking forward to. The first thing I said is I'm looking forward to less Danya now that she's been sent away after screwing the pooch with the witches. She should not have been allowed to go. I still maintain that. She should not have been allowed to go because she just sucks too much. And then I'm really looking forward to what I mentioned before about Carry On and his weapon. Like, what is he going to be able to do with his weapon, and how is he going to help? Because I'm still kind of suspicious of him, but not because I think that he's a villain, especially now that the Quicksilver allowed him to wield them, to wield a weapon with them like imbued in it. I'm assuming that he's not going to be revealed as a villain because I don't have any reason to think that the Quicksilver would like be down with that. But I'm still curious and suspicious because he's like, I'm going to go help you save Fisher. Like, what is it about Carrion that makes him think that he has the skills and the ability to go help Cyrus save Fisher from this like super evil, extremely powerful Malcolm Fay vampire? Like, he's too sure of himself. He keeps coming in with all the, like I said, clutch ideas. He saves the day with these like random ideas that nobody else seems to be able to come up with. And he still has this mysterious history of this like Fay textbook, basically from Granny Swift. Like, what is going on? What's he going to do with the weapon? How is he going to help? Yeah, I'm really, really curious about that. And I hope again that we get to see this in book 1, Quicksilver, as opposed to reading book 2. But you guys know, as soon as we finish this series and I finish book 1, I will devour book 2, and I'm so excited about it. So Mindy's got one thing that she's looking forward to, and that's really seeing what they do. Same thing that I just said, seeing what they do to get Fisher back. Carrion wielding that sword is going to be good. Mindy, you and I, we're just like on the same wavelength right here. And also she's looking forward to when Cyrus and Fisher are reunited, because I just know she's going to accept the mating bond. Truly, I mean, if she's like, let me take a few more days to think about it, I will be so upset, because she's been making some really stupid decisions in this book, and Fisher's been making some really stupid decisions in this book. So I would not be able to handle that at all. Not one bit, but I cannot wait to keep reading. Honestly, I am enjoying this book so much. I had seen and heard so many great things about it. I'm loving reading it. And I'm just having a really good time. I can't wait to keep going and see what happens. So nerds, we only have 2 more episodes to talk about Quicksilver. Next time, we're going to talk about chapters 40 through 43. My cohorts will be back in the studio recording with me, and it'll probably be a funnier episode because I just, it's always better with friends, right? Please make sure you leave us a like, a review, give us 5 stars, send us to your friends. Tune in to our Tuesday episodes where we have our nerdiest topics. We've got so many great author interviews with a lot of Imaginarium authors released and releasing. Go check those out, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Like what you heard in this episode? Follow Our Nerdiest Thing on Instagram at instagram.com/Our Nerdiest Thing, or Facebook at facebook.com/Our Nerdiest Thing. We love hearing from fellow nerds. Email us at ournerdiestthing@gmail.com.